The young woman froze when she saw her childhood photo with the millionaire on the bus. The late afternoon light filtered through the grimy windows of the CTA bus, casting long orange shadows across the tired faces of Chicago's working class. Madison Maddie Hale pressed her backpack against her chest, her feet aching from a double shift at Hale's diner. The bus lurched forward, packed shoulder to shoulder with people who smelled like coffee, fast food, and the kind of exhaustion that settles deep into your bones. She'd been on her feet for 12 hours straight. Her manager, Rita, had called in sick, again, and Maddie couldn't say no. She never could. When you grew up with nothing, you learned early that you didn't turn down work. You didn't complain. You just showed up, kept your head down, and survived. The bus hit a pothole, and Maddie grabbed the pole to steady herself. Her reflection stared back at her in the window. 23 years old, dark circles under her eyes, brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked older than she was. Life had a way of doing that. A few feet ahead, a man in a dark tailored suit tried to adjust an expensive leather briefcase balanced on his lap. He looked out of place, too polished, too put together for public transit. Richard Callahan didn't usually take the bus, but his driver had called in at the last minute, and his Mercedes was in the shop. At 49, he'd built an empire from nothing. But tonight, he just looked tired, the kind of tired that money couldn't fix. The bus driver hit the brakes hard at a red light, and everyone jerked forward. Richard's briefcase slipped from his lap, snapping open as it hit the floor. Papers scattered. A leather portfolio, business cards, and then, sliding across the worn rubber floor, a photograph. Maddie bent down instinctively to help. Her fingers closed around the photo before she even looked at it, and then time stopped. The image was faded, the edges worn soft from years of handling. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, wore a yellow sundress with white flowers. Her hair was pulled back in 2 neat braids tied with matching ribbons. She was smiling, really smiling, the kind of pure joy that only children know, and her small arms wrapped around the leg of a man standing beside her. The man was younger in the photo, without the gray at his temples, without the weight of the world in his eyes. But it was unmistakably the same man, now kneeling beside her, gathering his scattered papers. The little girl was her. Maddie's breath caught in her throat. Her vision blurred at the edges. Suddenly, she was 5 years old again, standing in a big backyard with green grass that tickled her bare feet. There was a porch swing, wind chimes, the smell of roses, a woman's voice calling her name. Maddie. Maddie, baby, come inside. And then screaming. Thunder. Rain pounding against windows. Her mother's arms wrapped so tight around her she could barely breathe, and then, "Miss, are you all right?" Richard's voice cut through the memory. Maddie blinked, coming back to the present. Her hand was shaking. The photo trembled between her fingers. Her voice came out barely a whisper. She swallowed hard and tried again. This girl, in the picture, who is she? Richard glanced at the photo, and something flickered across his face. Pain, grief, something ancient and buried. He reached for it gently, carefully, the way you'd handle something precious and broken. That was my daughter, he said quietly. His voice had gone soft, distant, a long time ago. Was. Maddie's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. She died. She and her mother both, 18 years ago. He said it like he'd said it 1,000 times before, like the words had worn grooves into his soul. I'm sorry, The bus lurched to a stop. Richard stood, sliding the photo carefully back into his briefcase. He looked at Maddie for just a moment, really looked at her, and something unreadable crossed his face. Recognition? No. Impossible. Just concern for a stranger who'd helped him pick up his things. Thank you, he said. And then he was gone, stepping off into the Chicago evening. Disappearing into the crowd on North Avenue, Maddie stood frozen, still gripping the pole, her knuckles white. Other passengers pushed past her annoyed, muttering under their breath. She didn't care. She couldn't move. Her hand went to her neck, fingers closing around the thin silver chain hidden beneath her work uniform. She pulled it out slowly. A small pendant in the shape of half a star dangled there, tarnished and old. Along the broken edge, barely visible anymore, were the letters. And Maddie, she'd worn it every single day since the orphanage. It was the only thing she had left from before. That, and one other thing. When she finally made it back to her tiny studio apartment in Pilsen, Maddie didn't even turn on the lights. She dropped her backpack by the door and went straight to the shoebox under her bed. Her hands were still shaking as she opened it. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was the other photograph, the twin of the one she'd seen on the bus. Same yellow dress, same braids, same little girl wrapped around a man's leg. But in this version, the man's face had been torn away, ripped out in jagged pieces, leaving only his legs and torso visible. On the back, in faded blue ink, someone had written, "Maddie and Daddy, summer 2007. She'd stared at this photo a million times growing up, trying to remember, trying to make sense of the holes in her memory. The caseworkers had told her both parents were dead. No family, no one coming for her. She'd been 5 years old, terrified and alone, shuffled from one foster home to another until she aged out of the system at 18. But now she knew the truth. Her father wasn't dead. He was alive. He was real. He'd been standing 3 feet away from her on a crowded bus in Chicago, and he had no idea who she was. Maddie pressed the photograph against her chest and let herself cry. Really cry. For the first time in years. The kind of crying that came from somewhere deep and broken. The kind that hurt your ribs and made your throat raw. When the tears finally stopped, something else took their place. Determination. She grabbed her laptop and typed his name into the search bar. Richard Callahan. The results flooded in. CEO of Callahan Enterprises. Philanthropist. Widower. Net worth in the tens of millions. Pictures of him at charity galas, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, business conferences. Always serious. Always alone. And in every article. The same phrase, Callahan, who lost his wife and daughter in a tragic accident 18 years ago, has dedicated his life to charitable causes supporting at-risk youth. At-risk youth. Kids like her. Kids who'd been thrown away, forgotten, lost in the system. The irony was almost funny. Almost. Maddie stared at the screen until her eyes burned. Then she opened a new tab and started digging deeper. She needed to know everything. His schedule, his habits, where he lived, where he worked, where he went when he thought no one was watching. Because one way or another, she was going to find out why the world thought she was dead, and she was going to make him remember. Maddie barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the photograph, 2 versions of the same moment, separated by 18 years and a lifetime of lies. By the time dawn crept through her apartment window, she'd already made coffee and spread everything she had across her kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. The torn photograph, the half-star pendant, a stack of printouts from her late-night internet deep dive, and a yellow legal pad covered in her scratchy handwriting, timelines and questions branching out like a spider web. Why does everyone think I'm dead? Where is my mother really? Who tore his face out of my photo? She traced her finger over the jagged edge where her father's face should have been. Someone had ripped it out with force. Angry, violent tears in the paper. Her mother. It had to be. But why? Her phone buzzed. A text from Rita. "Can you cover the morning shift? Please." Maddie stared at the message. She'd worked 60 hours this week already. Her feet still ached. She had exactly $47 in her checking account until Friday. But she also had a lead on her father. And that was worth more than another shift slinging eggs and coffee. "Sorry, can't today?" She typed back. "Family emergency." It wasn't even a lie. By 9 a.m., Maddie was standing across the street from Callahan Enterprises in River North, nursing a coffee she couldn't really afford. The building was all glass and steel. The kind of place where people wore $1,000 suits and never thought twice about it. She felt small standing there in her thrift store jeans and worn sneakers. A black town car pulled up to the entrance. Richard Callahan stepped out, briefcase in hand, moving with the kind of confidence that came from never having to ask permission for anything. He looked different in the daylight. Older, more tired, but still handsome in that silver fox way. A woman walked beside him, elegant and polished, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Maddie's research had identified her, Sabrina Callahan, Richard's cousin, 38 years old, VP of Operations at Callahan Enterprises. In every photo Maddie had found online, Sabrina was right there beside him, at galas, at board meetings, at charity events. Always perfectly dressed, always smiling, always close. There was something about the way Sabrina looked at Richard that made Maddie's stomach turn. Not quite romantic, but definitely possessive, like a guard dog protecting its territory. They disappeared into the building, and Maddie exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. This was crazy. What was she even doing here? Following a stranger around Chicago because of a photograph and some half-remembered childhood dreams. He'd made it clear on the bus. His daughter was dead. He believed it. Whatever happened 18 years ago. He thought she was gone, but Maddie wasn't gone. She was right here, breathing, alive, and completely invisible to him. She pulled out her phone and looked at the photo she'd taken of her torn picture last night. Then she compared it to the screenshots she'd saved of Richard at various events. Same jaw, same eyes, same way of standing with his weight slightly to the left. It was him. She wasn't crazy. For the next 3 days, Maddie became a ghost. She learned Richard's routine like a song. He arrived at the office every morning at 8:30, left around 6, sometimes 7. On Tuesday, he had lunch at a French place in the Gold Coast. Alone, always alone, reading the Wall Street Journal with his meal. On Wednesday, he went to the gym. Thursday night, he attended some kind of charity planning meeting at a church in Lincoln Park. She watched him from coffee shops, from park benches, from across busy streets. She learned the way he walked, the way he rubbed his temple when he was stressed, the way he looked up at the sky sometimes like he was searching for something he'd lost. He looked lonely, successful, powerful, rich, but lonely in the way that money could never fix. On Friday evening, she followed him to Oak Park. The address had been easy enough to find. Public records, property taxes, the usual digital breadcrumbs rich people left behind. His house was exactly what she'd imagined. A massive Victorian mansion set back from the street, surrounded by old oak trees and a wrought iron fence that screamed, "Keep out." Maddie stood on the sidewalk, staring up at the windows glowing warm against the twilight. Somewhere in that house, her father was living a life she'd never been part of. 18 years of birthdays, Christmases, graduations, all the moments she'd spent alone in foster homes and group shelters, wondering why nobody wanted her. And he'd spent those same years thinking she was dead. Who had done this to them? Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Richard Callahan sat in his study with a glass of scotch he hadn't touched. The room was dark, except for the green-shaded desk lamp casting shadows across mahogany and leather. In his hands, he held the photograph from the bus. He'd looked at it 100 times since Tuesday, maybe more. Madison Elizabeth Callahan, his daughter, his baby girl. She'd be 23 now if she were still alive, the same age as that young woman on the bus, the one who'd looked at him with those wide, desperate eyes, like she'd seen a ghost. This girl, who is she? The way she'd asked it, her voice shaking, her hand trembling as she held the photograph. It had stayed with him all week, gnawing at the edges of his carefully constructed walls. He took a sip of scotch, letting it burn down his throat. Maddie had died with her mother, Elena, in a car accident 18 years ago. That's what the police had told him. That's what the death certificate said. That's what he'd believed for nearly 2 decades, even though they'd never found the bodies. Even though some part of him had never stopped waiting for them to walk through the door, the memorial service had been closed. Casket. Empty caskets, actually. But no one had said that out loud. The grief counselor had told him it was normal to deny death when there were no remains, that he needed to let go, move on, find closure. So he had, or at least he'd tried. He'd built a business empire. He'd thrown himself into charity work, helping kids who had nobody, kids who'd been abandoned or orphaned. He'd convinced himself it meant something, that he was honoring Maddie's memory by helping children like she might have been. But late at night, in this empty house, he still kept her room exactly the way it had been, still kept her drawings in a box in his closet, still wore the other half of the star pendant on a chain around his neck, hidden beneath his shirts where no one could see. He pulled it out now, letting it catch the lamplight. Half a silver star with the letters E engraved on the broken edge. Maddie's half had said M-A-D-D. Together they spelled her name. He'd given it to her on her 4th birthday. She'd cried because she wanted the whole star, and he'd promised they'd keep each other's halves safe until she was old enough to understand that some things were more precious when shared. Richard closed his eyes and let the memory wash over him. Her laugh, her tiny hand in his, the way she'd called him Daddy, like it was the most important word in the world. A knock on the study door made him look up. Sabrina entered without waiting for permission, perfectly dressed even at 9 p.m., carrying a folder. "You missed dinner," she said, her tone lightly scolding. "I had Maria keep a plate warm. I'm not hungry." "Richard," she moved closer, perching on the edge of his desk. "You can't keep doing this to yourself. It's been 18 years. I know how long it's been." Sabrina's eyes flicked to the photograph in his hand, and something flickered across her face. Concern, fear. It was gone too quickly to read. "You need to let them go," she said softly. "Elena would want you to be happy." Richard looked at his cousin, the woman who'd stood by him through everything, who'd helped him rebuild after his world fell apart, who'd become his right hand in business, and the closest thing he had to family. What if... He stopped, the words feeling dangerous even before he spoke them. What if they didn't die? Sabrina's expression froze. "What? The bodies were never found. The investigation was inconclusive. What if... Don't." Sabrina's voice turned sharp. "Don't do this to yourself again. We've been through this. The police, the investigators, everyone confirmed it. They're gone." "Richard, I'm sorry, but they're gone." She stood up, smoothing her skirt with hands that trembled just slightly. "Get some rest. You have the Peterson meeting in the morning." She left, closing the door a little too firmly behind her. Richard sat alone in the darkness, the photograph still in his hands, and for the first time in 18 years, he let himself wonder if everything he'd been told was a lie. Sabrina Callahan didn't sleep well that night either. She stood in her penthouse apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, a glass of wine in her hand, watching the city lights blur through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her reflection stared back at her, still beautiful at 38, still polished, still in control, but her eyes told a different story. She'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let it all unravel now. The photograph, that damned photograph Richard kept looking at with those haunted eyes, like he was trying to solve a puzzle that should have stayed buried. She'd seen the way he'd changed this past week. Quieter, more distant, asking questions he hadn't asked in years. And then there was the girl. Sabrina had noticed her Tuesday morning, standing across the street from the office building. Young, early 20s, wearing cheap clothes and clutching a coffee cup like it was keeping her warm. She'd thought nothing of it at first, just another lost soul in the city. But then she'd seen the girl again, Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, following them all the way to Oak Park. Sabrina had made it her business to know everything that happened around Richard. It's how she'd survived, how she'd climbed from his poor cousin to VP of one of Chicago's most successful companies. Knowledge was power. Control was survival. And 18 years ago, she'd taken control when everything was falling apart. She took a long sip of wine, letting the memory surface despite herself. 18 years earlier, Sabrina had been 20, fresh out of college, working as Richard's assistant when everything went to hell. Elena, Richard's wife, had been spiraling for months. Postpartum depression that never lifted after Maddie was born. Paranoia that grew darker by the day. Wild accusations about people watching them, following them, trying to hurt their daughter. Richard had tried everything. Therapy, medication, support. Nothing worked. Elena only got worse, and the perfect family Sabrina had always envied began to crack. Then came the night of the storm. Sabrina had been at the house when Elena packed a bag, grabbed 5-year-old Maddie, and ran. Richard was in New York on business. Elena had screamed that she was protecting her daughter, that they needed to disappear, that Richard didn't understand the danger they were in. Sabrina had followed Elena's car through the rain-slicked streets, watched her drive to some shelter on the south side, watched her clutch little Maddie like the world was ending, and Sabrina had made a choice. She'd called Richard, told him Elena had taken Maddie and disappeared. She'd called the police, reported Elena as unstable and dangerous. She'd called lawyers, social workers, anyone who would listen. And when Elena died 3 months later, an overdose in some cheap motel room, alone and broken, Sabrina had made sure 5-year-old Madison Callahan disappeared into the foster care system under a different name. It had been easy, really. Elena had given a false name at the shelter. The paperwork was already confused. A few phone calls, a few signatures, a few people willing to look the other way for the right price, and Madison Hale became just another orphan in a broken system. Richard had grieved. He'd searched. But Sabrina had been there every step of the way, controlling the narrative, managing the investigators, slowly convincing him that both Elena and Maddie were gone forever, and he'd believed her. He'd had no reason not to. She'd saved him, in a way. Saved him from a mentally ill wife who would have destroyed his reputation. Saved him from the chaos of raising a daughter alone while building an empire. Given him space to become the man he was meant to be, with her by his side. Of course, always by his side. Sabrina drained her wine glass and poured another. The guilt had faded years ago. She'd done what needed to be done. Richard was successful, powerful, respected. He'd built something extraordinary, and she'd been essential to that success. But now, 18 years later, the past was starting to wake up. That girl watching from across the street, there was something about her that made Sabrina's instincts scream danger. The age was right. The timing was suspicious, and the way she'd stared at Richard with those desperate, searching eyes. No, it wasn't possible. Madison Hale had disappeared into the system completely. Sabrina had made sure of it. The girl would have no records connecting her to Richard. No way to trace her origins. Nothing but a blank space where her history should be. Still, Sabrina hadn't survived this long by being careless. Tomorrow, she'd find out exactly who this girl was. And if she was a threat, Sabrina would handle it. She always did. The next morning, Maddie stood outside a community center in Logan Square, reading the flyer she'd printed from Richard's company website, Callahan Foundation Benefit Event, supporting at-risk youth. Her hands were shaking as she pushed through the doors. The space was filled with volunteers setting up tables, hanging banners, organizing donation boxes. The event was tomorrow, but they needed help with prep work. The website had said volunteers were welcome. Maddie had signed up under her real name, Madison Hale. Let them see her coming. She was done hiding. She checked in at the volunteer table, got her name tag, and started helping arrange chairs in neat rows. Her heart hammered every time someone walked through the door, waiting for Richard to appear. An hour passed. Then 2. Her hope started to fade, and then she heard his voice. Sabrina, I told you we need more space between the tables. People need room to move. Maddie's head snapped up. Richard stood near the entrance, gesturing at the layout while Sabrina took notes on her tablet. He wore dark jeans and a casual button-down, the most relaxed she'd seen him, but he still carried himself like someone used to being in charge. Sabrina looked up from her tablet, and her eyes swept the room with the precision of a security camera. They landed on Maddie and stopped. For 3 long seconds, they just stared at each other across the busy room. Sabrina's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. Recognition, assessment, calculation. Then she looked away, leaning close to Richard and whispering something in his ear. Maddie's stomach dropped. She forced herself to keep arranging chairs, to look busy, to not run like every instinct was screaming at her to do. She could feel Sabrina watching her. 20 minutes later, as Maddie was organizing donation boxes near the back wall, a shadow fell across her work. You're new here. Sabrina's voice was smooth, pleasant, completely unthreatening. I don't think we've met. Maddie straightened up, wiping her palms on her jeans. Up close, Sabrina was even more intimidating. Perfectly styled hair, designer clothes that probably cost more than Maddie's rent, and eyes that saw everything. Madison Hale, Maddie said, extending her hand. I signed up online to volunteer. Sabrina's handshake was firm. Cool, brief. How wonderful. We always appreciate community support. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. What brings you to our foundation specifically? I grew up in foster care, Maddie said truthfully. I know what these kids are going through. I wanted to help. Something flickered across Sabrina's face. Foster care. How difficult that must have been. She tilted her head slightly. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? 23? And your family? Don't have one. Maddie met her gaze steadily. I was placed in the system when I was 5. Never got adopted. Aged out at 18. Sabrina's expression remained perfectly sympathetic, but her eyes had gone calculating. I'm so sorry to hear that. Do you remember anything about your biological family? Maddie's hand moved unconsciously to her necklace, hidden beneath her shirt. Pieces, nothing concrete. Well, Sabrina's smile sharpened. You'll find Mr. Callahan is very passionate about helping young people like yourself. He understands loss. Before Maddie could respond, Richard appeared beside them, carrying a box of name tags. Sabrina, did you... He stopped, noticing Maddie for the first time. His eyes widened slightly, and she saw the recognition dawn. You, from the bus. You two have met. Sabrina's voice was carefully neutral. Briefly, Richard said, still staring at Maddie like he was trying to place her. You helped me pick up my things when my briefcase fell. It was nothing, Maddie managed to say, her voice steadier than she felt. Still, I should have thanked you properly. He set down the box and extended his hand. Richard Callahan, Madison Hale. His hand was warm, strong, and the moment their palms touched, Maddie felt tears threatening. This was her father, right here, shaking her hand like she was a stranger. Are you here volunteering for tomorrow's event? He asked. Yes, sir. That's very kind of you. Something in his expression softened. Sabrina mentioned you grew up in foster care. I did. Then you understand why this work matters. He glanced at the pendant visible at her neckline. She'd pulled it out without thinking, and his eyes narrowed slightly. That's an interesting necklace. Maddie's hand flew to it. It was my mother's. It looks like... Richard started to say, but Sabrina cut in smoothly. Richard, we really need to finalize the seating arrangements. The caterer needs numbers. Right. He looked at Maddie one more time, something uncertain in his eyes. Thank you again for helping. I hope you'll join us tomorrow. I will, Maddie said. Sabrina guided Richard away, her hand possessive on his elbow, but she glanced back once. Her expression was pleasant. Professional, but her eyes promised war. Maddie spent the next day pacing her tiny apartment, rehearsing what she'd say. The benefit event wasn't until evening, but waiting felt impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Richard's face when he'd noticed her pendant. That flicker of recognition, quickly buried under politeness and routine. He'd seen it. She was sure of it. The half-star pendant had meant something to him, even if he didn't understand why. Yet, by 3 o'clock, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her backpack, tucked both photographs inside, the torn one and the printout she'd made of the one from the bus, and headed for the blue line. Her hands trembled as she gripped the rail during the 40-minute ride to Oak Park. She hadn't planned this, hadn't thought it through, but 18 years of not knowing had built up inside her like water behind a dam, and the dam was finally breaking. The mansion looked different in daylight, less imposing somehow, but still massive, a brick and stone Victorian with turrets and bay windows, surrounded by ancient oak trees that cast dappled shadows across the manicured lawn. The wrought iron fence was taller than she'd realized, with sharp points at the top that seemed designed to keep people like her out. Maddie stood on the sidewalk, clutching her backpack, trying to gather courage. Just walk up to the gate, ring the bell, ask to speak to him. Simple. Terrifying. Impossible. She took a step forward, then another. The gate had an intercom system with a camera. Of course it did. Rich people didn't just open their doors to strangers. Her finger hovered over the button. Before she could press it, the front door of the mansion opened. Sabrina stepped out, perfectly dressed in cream slacks and a silk blouse, her heels clicking against the stone walkway. She moved with purpose toward the gate, and Maddie realized with sinking horror that she'd been spotted. The gate buzzed and swung open just enough for Sabrina to slip through. She closed it behind her with a decisive clang, positioning herself between Maddie and the house like a sentry. Miss Hale? Sabrina's smile was razor sharp. What a surprise to see you here. I need to speak to Mr. Callahan, Maddie said, forcing her voice to stay steady. Mr. Callahan is extremely busy preparing for tonight's event. Sabrina crossed her arms. If you have questions about volunteer duties, I'm happy to address them. It's not about that. Maddie pulled the photographs from her backpack with shaking hands. It's about this. She held up the torn photograph. The little girl in the yellow dress. The man's face ripped away, leaving only torn paper and faded ink. Sabrina's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, fear. It was gone in an instant, replaced by cool professionalism. "I'm not sure what you're trying to show me," Sabrina said carefully. "This is me," Maddie's voice cracked. "When I was 5 years old, and this..." She pulled out the printout of Richard's photograph, the intact version with his face clearly visible. "This is the same picture, the exact same moment. That man is Richard Callahan, and that little girl is me." Sabrina was quiet for a long moment, studying Maddie with those calculating eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle, almost pitying. "Miss Hale, I understand foster care can be traumatic. Memory is a fragile thing, especially childhood memory. Sometimes we want so badly to belong somewhere that our minds create connections that aren't really there. I'm not making this up. Mr. Callahan lost his daughter 18 years ago," Sabrina continued, her tone growing firmer. "Both his wife and daughter died. There were death certificates, police reports. He spent nearly 2 decades grieving that loss, and now you appear at his workplace, at his charity event, and at his home with a torn photograph and a story about being his long-lost child." She shook her head. "Do you understand how many people have tried this over the years? How many opportunists have seen a wealthy, lonely man and thought they could take advantage? I don't want his money. Then what do you want?" Sabrina's voice turned cold. "Attention, a father figure, a sad story to explain why your life didn't turn out the way you hoped." The words hit like physical blows. Maddie felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of this woman who looked at her like she was garbage on the street. "I want the truth," Maddie whispered. "I want to know why I have this picture. Why my mother..." Her voice broke. "Why my mother told me my daddy's name was Richard. Why I remember a big house and a backyard and wind chimes. And then suddenly I was in an orphanage and nobody would tell me what happened." For just a second, Sabrina's mask slipped. Maddie saw something raw underneath. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But then it was gone, replaced by steel. "Your mother was clearly troubled," Sabrina said quietly. "Many mentally ill people fixate on celebrities or wealthy individuals. She probably saw Mr. Callahan in the news and created an entire fantasy. I'm sorry, Miss Hale, but that's the truth. Richard Callahan is not your father. He never was." "You're lying." Maddie's hands were shaking so hard the photographs rattled. "I don't know why, but you're lying. I'm protecting him." Sabrina stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost dangerous. "From people who would hurt him, use him, exploit his grief for their own gain. And right now, Miss Hale, that's exactly what you're trying to do. I'm not... If you show up at his house again, I will call the police." Sabrina's smile returned, cold and final. "If you harass him at the office or at Foundation events, I will file a restraining order, and if you try to spread these lies publicly, I will ensure everyone knows you're an unstable young woman with a history in the foster care system who's attempting to defraud a respected businessman." Do I make myself clear? Maddie felt like she couldn't breathe. The world tilted sideways, and for a moment she thought she might be sick right there on the pristine Oak Park sidewalk. "Stay away from him," Sabrina said softly. "It's for the best. Trust me." She turned and walked back through the gate, which closed behind her with an electronic beep and a metallic click. Maddie stood there alone, clutching her photographs, watching Sabrina disappear into the mansion. The tears came then, hot and angry and helpless. She'd been so stupid, so naive, thinking she could just walk up to a mansion and present her evidence like this was some kind of movie where everything worked out in the end. This was real life where girls from foster care didn't get happy endings, where powerful people like Sabrina Callahan could shut you down with a smile and a threat, and there wasn't a damn thing you could do about it. Maddie turned away from the gate, tears streaming down her face, and started walking. She didn't know where she was going. Just away from the mansion and the iron gate, and the woman who'd looked at her like she was nothing. She'd made it half a block when she realized the photographs were still in her hands. She looked down at them, at the little girl in the yellow dress, at the man whose face had been torn away in anger. And very carefully, very deliberately, Maddie walked back to the gate. She didn't press the intercom, didn't call out. She simply slid the torn photograph through the iron bars, letting it fall onto the stone walkway on the other side. If Richard Callahan wanted answers, he could find them there. If he didn't, if Sabrina destroyed the evidence or convinced him it meant nothing, then at least Maddie would know she'd tried, that she'd been brave enough to fight for the truth, even when the truth didn't want to be found. She walked away without looking back. Inside the mansion, Sabrina watched from the window until Maddie disappeared down the tree-lined street. Only then did she let herself exhale, her perfect posture sagging just slightly. She needed to move fast. She went outside and retrieved the photograph from the walkway, holding it carefully by the edges. It was old, worn soft from years of handling, with that telltale torn edge where a face should be. She carried it inside and locked herself in Richard's study. This was the exact photograph Richard kept in his desk drawer, the one he'd shown her years ago during one of his dark periods, asking if she remembered taking it, if she remembered that summer day before everything fell apart. She'd told him she didn't remember, had watched him put it away with hands that shook. But she remembered. She remembered the yellow dress Elena had sewn herself, remembered little Maddie's laugh, remembered standing behind the camera while Richard lifted his daughter up and spun her around, both of them laughing in the golden afternoon light. She remembered everything. Sabrina placed the photograph on Richard's desk blotter, arranging it carefully so he'd see it the moment he sat down. She couldn't destroy it. He'd notice it was missing from his drawer eventually. And if this Maddie Hale really was who she claimed to be, trying to suppress the truth would only make things worse. No, better to control the narrative, better to let Richard find it and come to her with questions, so she could shape his understanding, manage his response, keep him from doing anything rash. She'd spent 18 years protecting him. She wasn't about to stop now. Sabrina smoothed her blouse, checked her reflection in the window, and went to prepare for the evening's event, leaving the photograph like a ghost on Richard's desk. Richard came home at 6:30, exhausted from last-minute event preparations and board meetings that had run long. He loosened his tie as he climbed the stairs to his study, thinking about nothing except the scotch waiting in his desk drawer, and maybe an hour of peace before he had to put his public face back on for the benefit. The study was dark, except for the last rays of evening light filtering through the windows. He flicked on the desk lamp and froze. The photograph lay in the center of his desk blotter, positioned so carefully it might as well have been screaming for attention. His photograph, the one he kept locked in his drawer, that he only looked at on his worst nights when the grief became unbearable. The picture of Maddie in her yellow sundress, her small arms wrapped around his leg, both of them laughing at something Elena had said behind the camera. But this wasn't his photograph. Richard picked it up with trembling hands. Same moment, same pose, same yellow dress, but the paper was different. More worn, softer at the edges, like it had been handled thousands of times, and where his face should be, there was nothing but torn paper, jagged edges, angry rips that spoke of rage and pain. Someone had destroyed his face, ripped it away like they wanted to erase him from existence. His chest tightened. He opened the desk drawer with shaking hands and pulled out his own version, placed them side by side under the lamp, identical, except one was whole and one was broken. "What the hell?" he whispered. 2 copies of the same photograph. He'd never made copies. Elena had been the one who handled family pictures, and after she died, everything had been boxed up, stored away, too painful to look at. So where had this come from? Richard's mind raced back to the bus. The girl who'd picked up his briefcase, Madison Hale. She'd looked at the photograph like she'd seen a ghost, and yesterday at the community center, when he'd noticed her pendant, half a star, just like the one he wore beneath his shirt. Something had stirred in his memory, something he'd been too busy to examine. He pulled out his phone and typed her name into the search bar, but there was almost nothing. No social media, no public records beyond a current address in Pilsen. It was like she barely existed. 23 years old, grew up in foster care, placed in the system at age 5, the same age Maddie would have been. Richard's hands started shaking harder. He reached for the scotch, poured 2 fingers, drank it in one burning swallow. Then he grabbed his keys and headed for the door. The address led him to a neighborhood he rarely visited. Narrow streets, Older buildings with fire escapes zigzagging down brick facades. Corner stores with signs in Spanish and English. Maddie's building was a 3-story walk-up with peeling paint and a broken buzzer system. Richard sat in his car across the street for 10 minutes, trying to decide if he was losing his mind. What was he doing here? Chasing a girl with a photograph because she happened to be the right age and grew up in foster care. Sabrina was right. Over the years, plenty of people had tried to take advantage of his wealth and grief. This was probably just another scam, except the photograph had been handled with love, worn soft at the edges from years of careful touching. And that pendant, he'd seen it clearly yesterday, half a silver star hanging around her neck, just like the one he wore, before he could talk himself out of it. Richard got out of the car and climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Apartment 3B. He knocked, his heart pounding harder than it had in years. No answer. He knocked again. "Miss Hale, Madison, it's Richard Callahan. I just want to talk." Silence. Either she wasn't home, or she was hiding, after the way Sabrina had probably treated her earlier, because he knew his cousin, knew how protective she could be, how she saw threats everywhere. He wouldn't blame the girl for not opening the door. Richard pulled out a business card and a pen, wrote on the back, "I found your photograph. We need to talk. Please call me. Ruck." He slid it under the door and stood there for a moment, listening to the building's sounds. Television voices, someone cooking with garlic and cilantro, a baby crying 2 floors down. These were the sounds of Maddie's life, this cramped building in a forgotten neighborhood, while he lived in a mansion with empty rooms and ghosts. If she really was his daughter, no, he couldn't let himself think that way. Not yet. Not until he had proof. But his hands were still shaking when he got back to his car. Maddie watched from the corner bodega's window as Richard Callahan got into his expensive car and drove away. She'd been buying ramen and eggs, the only groceries she could afford this week, when she'd seen him pull up. Her first instinct had been to run upstairs, confront him, demand answers, but then fear had frozen her in place. What if Sabrina had sent him? What if this was some kind of trap? What if he was here to threaten her the way Sabrina had, so she'd hidden in the bodega? Watching through the window display, her heart hammering as he disappeared into her building. When he came back out 5 minutes later, he'd looked defeated, sad, human in a way she hadn't seen before. After his car turned the corner, Maddie ran upstairs and found the business card under her door. "I found your photograph. We need to talk. Please call me." She stared at the card for a long time, her vision blurring with tears. He'd found it. He'd seen it. And instead of calling the police or having his lawyers threaten her, he'd come here, to her crappy apartment in Pilsen, asking to talk. But could she trust him? Could she trust anyone in this situation? Maddie made a decision before she called Richard Callahan. Before she let herself hope again, she needed to find someone who knew the truth, someone who'd been there 18 years ago and might still remember. She pulled out her laptop and started searching for one name she'd found buried in her foster care records. Nurse Patricia Morrison, St. Catherine's Hospital, 2007. It took 3 hours and a dozen dead ends, but she finally found a listing. Patricia Morrison. Now 72, living in a retirement community in Evanston. There was even a phone number. Maddie's hands shook as she dialed. The phone rang 4 times before an older woman's voice answered. "Hello? Ms. Morrison, Patricia Morrison." "Yes. Who's calling?" "My name is Madison Hale. You might not remember me, but..." Maddie's voice cracked. "I think you knew my mother, Elena Callahan, about 18 years ago." There was a long silence on the other end. Then, "Dear God, Maddie," the sound of her childhood name, spoken with such recognition and warmth, made Maddie's knees buckle. She slid down the wall to sit on her apartment floor. "You remember me?" "Of course I remember you." Patricia's voice was thick with emotion. "Sweet girl, I've thought about you so many times over the years. Are you all right? Where are you?" "I'm in Chicago. Maddie wiped her eyes. "I'm trying to understand what happened. To my mother. To me. Why everyone thinks I'm dead." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "This isn't a conversation for the phone. Can you come see me? Tomorrow?" Yes, I can." "Good. Because there are things you need to know. Things I should have spoken up about years ago." Patricia sighed heavily. I was Elena's private nurse during her last months. I was there the night she died. And honey, what they told your father about what happened, it wasn't the whole truth. Maddie's breath caught. What do you mean? Tomorrow, Patricia said firmly. Come at 10 o'clock. I'll tell you everything I know. And Maddie, bring that photograph I know you've been carrying. The one with the yellow dress. How did you? Because I'm the one who took it, Patricia said softly. That summer day in the backyard. I remember it like it was yesterday. Your father spinning you around while your mother laughed. It was one of the last good days before everything fell apart, after they hung up. Maddie sat on her floor for a long time, staring at Richard's business card. Tomorrow she'd get answers. Tomorrow she'd learn the truth about what happened 18 years ago. And then, only then, would she decide whether to call the number on that card? Richard sat in his study that night. Both photographs spread before him, along with files he'd pulled from storage. Elena's medical records, police reports from her disappearance, the accident investigation, death certificates that had never quite sat right with him, because there had been no bodies. Just a burned-out car by the lakefront, and enough circumstantial evidence to close the case. For 18 years, he'd accepted what he'd been told, that Elena's mental illness had spiraled, that she'd taken Maddie and run, that they'd died in an accident he couldn't prevent because he'd been in New York on business, because he hadn't seen the warning signs, because he'd failed them. But now, looking at these files with fresh eyes, he saw the gaps, the inconsistencies, the signatures on documents that looked wrong, the reports filed by people he didn't remember authorizing, and throughout everything, one name kept appearing: Sabrina Callahan, handling details, managing the investigation, protecting him from the worst of it. She'd been 20 years old, his assistant, family, the one person he'd trusted completely during the darkest time of his life. Had she been protecting him, or had she been hiding something? Richard pulled out his phone and made a call. He should have made years ago. Collins Investigations. This is Mike. Mike, it's Richard Callahan. I need you to look into something for me. A cold case from 18 years ago. He paused, his voice dropping to something raw and determined. I need to know what really happened to my wife and daughter, and I need to know the truth, even if it destroys me. The retirement community in Evanston was nicer than Maddie expected. A renovated brick building with flower boxes in the windows, and a lobby that smelled like fresh coffee and lavender. She gave her name at the front desk, and a kind receptionist directed her to the second floor, room 214. Patricia Morrison answered the door before Maddie could knock, like she'd been waiting by the window. She was smaller than Maddie had imagined, with white hair pulled back in a bun and bright blue eyes that watered the moment she saw Maddie's face. "Oh my Lord," Patricia whispered, reaching out to touch Maddie's cheek with a trembling hand. "You look just like your mother, just exactly like her." Maddie's throat tightened. "You really remember me. Remember you, sweetheart. I held you on my lap while your mama slept. I sang you lullabies when she couldn't. I watched you draw pictures of stars and rainbows with crayons at the kitchen table." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Come in, we have so much to talk about." The apartment was small but cozy, filled with photographs and knitted blankets, and the kind of comfortable clutter that spoke of a life well lived. Patricia gestured to the couch and disappeared into the kitchen, returning with tea and cookies arranged on a flowered plate. "I made these this morning," she said, settling into the armchair across from Maddie. "Chocolate chip, your favorite if I remember right." Maddie took a cookie with shaking hands, not trusting herself to speak. Patricia studied her carefully. "How did you find me?" "Foster care records. It took some digging, but your name was on some of my mother's medical files." Maddie set down her tea, afraid she'd spill it. "Ms. Morrison, I need to know what happened. Everyone tells me my mother and I died in a car accident, but I'm sitting right here, and I've spent 18 years not knowing who I am or why I was abandoned." "You weren't abandoned, honey." Patricia's voice was firm. "Your mother loved you more than anything in this world. What happened to her? To both of you. It wasn't her fault, and it sure as hell wasn't yours. Then whose fault was it?" Patricia took a long breath, setting down her own teacup with careful precision. "Your mother had postpartum depression after you were born. It was severe. The kind that doesn't just go away with time or medication. She had episodes where reality got slippery, where she thought people were watching the house, following her, planning to hurt you. Your father tried everything. Doctors, therapy, medication, but nothing worked for long. Maddie nodded, her chest tight. I remember her being scared. I remember hiding in closets with her sometimes, and her telling me we had to be quiet. That was the paranoia. Patricia's expression was pained. But here's what most people don't know. What got buried in all the official reports. Your mother wasn't entirely wrong. What do you mean? Someone was watching her. Someone was manipulating things around her, making her paranoia worse, making her seem more unstable than she actually was. Small things. Moving her medication, hiding her appointment reminders, calling the house and hanging up, leaving the front door unlocked when she was sure she'd locked it. Things that made her question her own sanity. Maddie felt ice spreading through her veins. Who? I have suspicions, but no proof. Patricia leaned forward. What I do know is that your mother finally broke one night during a storm. She packed a bag, grabbed you, and ran. She told me she was taking you somewhere safe, somewhere she couldn't find you. She, not he. Your mother specifically said she, multiple times. Patricia's eyes were steady. She ran to a women's shelter on the south side, gave false names, called herself Elena Hale, and said you were Madison Hale. She was trying to hide from your father, thinking he was part of whatever conspiracy she believed was happening. But the truth is, she was hiding from someone much closer to him. Sabrina, Maddie whispered. Patricia's silence was answer enough. Your mother stayed at that shelter for about 2 weeks before I found her. She wouldn't let me tell your father where you were. She was terrified, crying, holding you so tight. Patricia wiped her eyes. I tried to get her to go back to the hospital, to get proper help, but she refused, said they'd take you away from her if she did. And then she left the shelter. She left. I don't know where she went after that, but 3 months later, I got a call from the Cook County morgue. They'd found her body in a motel room. Overdose. They said it was suicide, but... Patricia's voice broke. But I never believed it. Your mother would never have left you intentionally. Never. Maddie's hands were shaking so hard the tea sloshed in the cup. And me? What happened to me? That's where it gets murky. Officially, you died with her in a car accident. That's what the death certificate says. That's what they told your father. But I saw your mother's body, Maddie. She died alone in that motel room. There was no car accident. There was no fire. And there sure as hell was no dead child. So someone lied. Someone made it look like I died. Someone very clever covered their tracks. Patricia reached across and took Maddie's hand. After your mother died, I tried to find you. I called the shelter, the police, social services. Everyone gave me the runaround. And then one day I got a very polite phone call from a young woman, couldn't have been more than 20, telling me that the Callahan family appreciated my concern, but my services were no longer needed, and I'd be compensated for my silence. Sabrina. She never gave her name, but yes, I believe so. Patricia squeezed Maddie's hand. I took the money. God forgive me. I took it because I was young and scared and convinced myself there was nothing I could do. But I've regretted it every day since. Maddie pulled out the intact photograph she'd printed, the one from Richard's briefcase, and placed it on the coffee table. Do you recognize this? Patricia picked it up, and her face crumpled. I took this picture. July 2007. You were wearing that yellow dress your mother made for you. Your father had just gotten home from a business trip, and you were so happy to see him. He picked you up and spun you around, and you both laughed like nothing else in the world mattered. She traced her finger over the image. This was maybe 2 months before everything fell apart. I have the other copy, Maddie said quietly. Someone tore my father's face out of it, violently. Your mother did that. Patricia's voice was sad. During one of her episodes, she convinced herself your father was part of the conspiracy, that he wanted to take you from her. She destroyed every picture of him she could find. It broke my heart to watch. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 18 years pressing down on them. What do I do now? Maddie finally asked. My father, Richard. He doesn't know I'm alive. And Sabrina, If she did this, if she really separated us and let him think I was dead, how do I prove it? You need evidence, real evidence, not just an old nurse's memories. Patricia stood and went to a bookshelf, pulling down a shoebox. I kept copies of your mother's medical files. Not the official ones. Those probably got sanitized. But I kept my personal notes from my time caring for her. Times, dates, conversations, the weird phone calls, the things that didn't add up. She handed the box to Maddie. It's not much, but it's something. Maddie opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of handwritten pages, medication logs, appointment cards, and at the bottom, a small envelope with her name on it in shaky handwriting. What's this? Your mother gave it to me the last time I saw her at the shelter. She said if anything happened to her, I should give it to you when you were old enough to understand. Patricia's voice broke. I never thought I'd get the chance. Maddie opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single piece of paper with her mother's handwriting. My darling Maddie, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're safe. That's all I ever wanted. For you to be safe. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry my mind broke and I couldn't tell what was real anymore. But know this, your daddy loves you more than anything. He's not the enemy. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about so many things. The real danger is close to him. Someone he trusts. Someone who wants to keep him for herself. She'll do anything to make that happen. Find your daddy, baby girl. Find him and tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I always loved him. And tell him to look closer at the people he trusts most. I love you forever. Mama Maddie read it 3 times before the tears came. Patricia moved to sit beside her, pulling her into a hug while she sobbed. She knew, Maddie choked out. She knew someone was doing this to her, and no one believed her. I believe her now, Patricia said fiercely, and you need to make your father believe it too. When Maddie finally left an hour later, she had the shoebox tucked under her arm, and her mother's letter folded carefully in her pocket. She also had Patricia's phone number and a promise that the older woman would testify to everything if it came to that. Standing on the sidewalk outside the retirement home, Maddie pulled out Richard's business card. She'd been carrying it for days now, too scared to call. But she wasn't scared anymore. She was angry. Angry at Sabrina for destroying her family. Angry at the system that had failed her. Angry at 18 years of lies. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number before she could change her mind. It rang twice before his voice answered. Richard Callahan. Mr. Callahan. This is Madison Hale. You left me a card. You said we needed to talk. There was a pause, and she could hear him breathing. Could almost feel his shock through the phone. Yes, he said finally, his voice rough. Yes, we do. Where are you? I'll come to you. There's a coffee shop on Diversey near the lake. The Grind. Do you know it? I'll find it when... Maddie looked at her watch. It was almost noon. 1 hour. I'll be there. After they hung up, Maddie stood there holding her phone, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. In 1 hour, she was going to sit down with her father and tell him the truth about what had happened to his family, and if Sabrina got in the way. Maddie was ready to fight. Richard arrived at the Grind 15 minutes early, his hands sweating despite the autumn chill. He'd changed out of his suit into jeans and a sweater, trying to look less intimidating, more approachable, more like someone a terrified young woman might trust. He ordered a black coffee he didn't want, and chose a corner table with a view of the door. His phone sat face up on the table, showing the results of the call he'd made last night. Mike Collins from the private investigation firm had already started digging, and what he'd found in just 12 hours made Richard's blood run cold. Inconsistencies in the police reports, signatures that didn't match, witnesses who'd been paid off, and running through everything like a poisonous thread, Sabrina's fingerprints on documents she should never have touched. The door chimed, and Maddie walked in. She looked different than at the benefit event. No volunteer name tag, no forced smile, just a young woman in faded jeans and a hoodie, carrying a shoebox under her arm like it contained everything she owned. Her eyes scanned the coffee shop until they landed on him, and Richard saw her take a deep breath, gathering courage. He stood up. Madison, Mr. Callahan. She walked over slowly, like approaching a skittish animal. Thank you for coming. Please, call me Richard. He gestured to the chair across from him. Can I get you something? Coffee? Tea? Tea? Just water is fine. He went to the counter, giving her a moment to settle, and returned with a bottle of water and another coffee for himself. Even though his stomach was already twisted in knots, they sat in awkward silence for a moment. Richard noticed her hands were shaking as she opened the water bottle. "I don't know where to start," she said finally. "Start anywhere." His voice came out rougher than intended. "Just, please, tell me the truth, whatever it is." Maddie reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. Worn soft at the edges, she slid it across the table. Richard unfolded it and felt the world tilt sideways. It was a letter, in Elena's handwriting. His wife's handwriting that he'd recognize anywhere. Even after 18 years, he read it once, twice, 3 times, his vision blurring. "Find your daddy, baby girl. Find him and tell him I'm sorry. The real danger is close to him. Someone he trusts. Someone who wants to keep him for herself. Where did you get this?" His voice was barely a whisper. "My mother gave it to her nurse before she died, Patricia Morrison. I visited her this morning." Maddie pulled out the shoebox and opened it, revealing pages and pages of handwritten notes. "These are Nurse Morrison's personal records from when she cared for my mother. Dates, times, medications, things that didn't add up. Phone calls that came at weird hours and then hung up. My mother's medication being moved or going missing. Small things designed to make her think she was losing her mind." Richard's hands clenched into fists. Someone was gaslighting her. Yes, Maddie's voice was steady now, stronger. Someone wanted her to seem unstable, unfit, dangerous, and when she finally broke and ran with me, that same someone made sure we disappeared for good. Sabrina. The name tasted like ash in his mouth. Maddie nodded. "My mother never said her name explicitly in the letter, but Nurse Morrison remembers. My mother specifically said she was the danger. And after my mother died, Nurse Morrison received a payment and a warning from a young woman to stay quiet about everything." Richard stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Other customers looked over, and he realized he was breathing too hard, hands shaking with rage and grief, and 18 years of lies crashing down on him all at once. He couldn't finish the sentence. He walked to the window, staring out at the lake beyond, trying to process what he was hearing. His cousin, his family, the woman who'd stood beside him through the darkest time of his life, who'd helped him build his company, who'd been his right hand for nearly 2 decades. She'd destroyed his family. She'd stolen his daughter. She'd let him believe his wife and child were dead while... Mr. Callahan. Maddie's voice was soft behind him. "Richard, are you okay?" He turned to face her, and for the first time, he really looked past the cheap clothes and nervous energy, looked at the shape of her face, the color of her eyes, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear just like Elena used to do. "I need to know for certain," he said hoarsely. "I need proof that you're really my daughter." The words barely made it out. "I need proof that you're really my daughter." Maddie reached up and pulled out the necklace from beneath her hoodie. The half-star pendant caught the afternoon light. Richard's hand went to his own neck, pulling out the chain he'd worn hidden beneath his shirts for 18 years. The other half of the star, he walked back to the table on unsteady legs and held his pendant next to hers. The broken edges lined up perfectly, the engraving completing, M-A-D-D-I-E. "I gave this to you on your 4th birthday," Richard said, his voice breaking. "You cried because you wanted the whole star, and I told you we'd keep each other's halves safe until you were old enough to understand that some things are more precious when shared." Tears were streaming down Maddie's face. "I don't remember that. I don't remember a lot of things, but I've worn this every single day since I was 5 years old. It was the only thing they let me keep when they took me to the first foster home." Richard sat down heavily. "A DNA test. We need to do a DNA test. Not because I don't believe you. God, looking at you now, you look so much like your mother it's breaking my heart. But because we'll need legal proof, to protect you, to make sure no one can ever question this again." "Okay." Maddie wiped her eyes. "How do we... I'll arrange it today. Right now." Richard pulled out his phone, his hands still shaking. "I have a private lab that can rush the results. We'll have confirmation within 24 hours. And then what?" Richard looked at her, at his daughter, alive, sitting across from him after 18 years of believing she was dead, and felt something fierce and protective rise up in his chest. And then I'm going to make this right. All of it. His voice turned hard. Starting with Sabrina. The DNA test was done at a private clinic in the Gold Coast. A simple cheek swab for both of them, handled discreetly by a technician who asked no questions and signed a non-disclosure agreement. Richard paid extra for the rush processing. Results in 24 hours instead of the usual week. They left the clinic together, standing on the sidewalk in uncomfortable silence. "What do we do now?" Maddie asked. "Just wait. You could come to the house," Richard offered, then immediately shook his head. "No, Sabrina's there. That's not safe. I have my apartment, where I had to slide a business card under the door because the building security is non-existent." Richard ran a hand through his hair. "Let me get you a hotel room. Somewhere safe. Somewhere she can't find you until we have the test results and can confront her properly. I can't afford. I'm paying." His tone left no room for argument. "Please let me do this. I've already lost 18 years. I'm not losing another day to her manipulations." Maddie studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." Richard made a call, and within an hour, Maddie was checked into a suite at the Peninsula Hotel under a false name. It was more luxury than she'd ever experienced. Marble bathrooms, Egyptian cotton sheets, a view of Michigan Avenue that made her dizzy. Richard stood awkwardly in the doorway. "The room is paid for a week. Order whatever you need from room service and Maddie." He pulled out his wallet and handed her a credit card. "This is yours. Get clothes, food, whatever you need. Don't worry about the cost." "Richard, I can't." "Yes, you can." His eyes were fierce. "You're my daughter, even if the test comes back negative, which it won't. You're still the brave young woman who had the courage to find me and tell me the truth. Let me take care of you. Please." Maddie took the card with trembling hands. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to talk to my lawyers, and then I'm going to go home and look my cousin in the eye while I still have the self-control not to." He stopped, jaw clenched. "I'm going to get answers." After he left, Maddie stood in the middle of the hotel suite, her mother's letter still in her pocket, Patricia's shoebox on the desk, and the half-star pendant warm against her skin. Tomorrow, the DNA results would come back. Tomorrow, she'd have scientific proof that she was Madison Elizabeth Callahan, but standing there in that expensive hotel room, watching the sunset over the city she'd grown up in as a ghost, she already knew the truth in her bones. She'd found her father, and he'd found her. Richard drove back to Oak Park in a fog, his mind replaying every moment of the past 18 years. Every time Sabrina had managed his schedule, handled his affairs, controlled who got close to him. Every time she'd discouraged him from dating or remarrying, saying he wasn't ready, that Elena and Maddie would want him to grieve properly. Every lie she'd told while looking him straight in the eye. The mansion felt different when he walked in. Colder, darker, tainted by knowledge he couldn't unknow. Sabrina was in the living room, working on her laptop. She looked up and smiled. "There you are. I was starting to worry. The Peterson meeting ran long." "I didn't have a meeting today." Richard closed the door behind him, his voice carefully neutral. "I was following up on some personal matters." Something flickered across Sabrina's face. "What kind of personal matters?" "The kind that involve 18-year-old lies." He pulled out his phone and showed her the photographs. Both versions. Side by side. "Want to tell me how Madison Hale ended up with a copy of a photo that should only exist in my desk drawer?" The color drained from Sabrina's face. "Richard, I can explain. Can you explain why you paid off witnesses? Why you falsified police reports? Why you convinced me my daughter was dead when she was alive and suffering in foster care?" His voice rose with each word. "Can you explain that, Sabrina? I was protecting you. Don't." He held up a hand, his whole body shaking. "Don't you dare say you were protecting me. I have a daughter who's been alive this whole time. A daughter who's spent 18 years thinking she was abandoned. And you..." His voice broke. "You let me grieve. You let me believe they were both dead. How could you?" Sabrina stood up, her perfect composure cracking. She was going to destroy everything. Elena was sick, Richard. She was paranoid and unstable, and she was going to drag you down with her, the company, your reputation. Everything you'd built, it would have all been destroyed. So you destroyed my family instead. I saved you." Sabrina's voice turned desperate. "I saved you from a life of chaos and misery. I gave you the space to become who you were meant to be. Everything you have now, you have because I made the hard choices you couldn't make." Richard stared at her, seeing clearly for the first time in 18 years. "Get out!" "What? Get out of my house, out of my company, out of my life." His voice was ice. "You have until tomorrow morning to resign from Callahan Enterprises. After that, my lawyers will be in touch about criminal charges. Richard, please, 24 hours. Sabrina, and if you go anywhere near Madison Hale, if you so much as look in her direction, I will make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison." He turned away from her, unable to look at her face anymore. "Get out." He heard her leave, heard the front door close, heard her car pull out of the driveway. Only then did Richard let himself collapse into a chair, his head in his hands, and grieve for the daughter he'd lost, and the cousin he'd never really known at all. The call came at 9 in the morning, exactly 24 hours after the DNA test. Maddie was sitting on the hotel bed, staring at room service breakfast she couldn't eat. When her phone rang, Richard's name flashed on the screen. Her hand shook as she answered. "Hello? It's confirmed." Richard's voice was thick with emotion. 99.9% probability, Maddie, you're... He couldn't finish. She heard him take a shaky breath. "You're my daughter. Officially. Scientifically. Legally." Maddie pressed her hand to her mouth, trying not to sob. She'd known. Deep in her bones, she'd known. But hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way nothing else had. "What happens now?" she managed to ask. "Now we make it official in every way that matters." Richard's voice grew stronger, more determined. "I'm calling a meeting at the mansion. Today, 2 o'clock, my lawyers, my board members, key employees, and witnesses from the past. I want everyone to know the truth, and I want you there. Richard, I don't know if I can..." "You can." His tone was gentle but firm. "You've been brave enough to find me. Brave enough to face Sabrina at the gate. Brave enough to walk into that coffee shop and tell me the truth. You can do this, and I'll be right there with you. I promise." Maddie closed her eyes. "Okay, I'll be there. I'm sending a car for you at 1:30. And Maddie," he paused, "wear whatever makes you feel strong. This isn't about impressing anyone. This is about claiming what's rightfully yours." After they hung up, Maddie stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The girl looking back at her didn't look like a Callahan. She looked like what she was, a kid from foster care who'd learned to survive on scraps and willpower, but maybe that was exactly who needed to show up today. Not some polished version of herself, just Madison Hale, telling the truth. She pulled on her cleanest jeans, a simple black sweater, and the half-star pendant on the outside of her shirt where everyone could see it. Let them look. Let them judge. She was done hiding. The town car arrived precisely at 1:30. The driver was professional and kind, asking no questions during the drive to Oak Park. As they pulled up to the mansion, Maddie's stomach churned. The last time she'd been here, Sabrina had threatened her at the gate. But today the gate swung open immediately, and Richard was standing on the front steps waiting for her. He looked different, older. Somehow, like the weight of 18 years had finally caught up to him overnight. But when he saw her step out of the car, his face transformed with something that looked almost like hope. "You came," he said softly. "You asked me to." They stood there awkwardly for a moment, neither sure what to do. Then Richard opened his arms hesitantly, giving her the choice. Maddie stepped forward into the hug. It felt strange and unfamiliar. She'd spent so many years without physical affection that her body didn't quite know how to respond. But Richard held her carefully, like she was made of glass, and she felt something inside her chest crack open just a little. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry you had to grow up alone. I'm sorry for everything. It wasn't your fault." Maddie's voice was muffled against his shoulder. "You didn't know. But I should have." He pulled back, his hands still on her shoulders. "I should have known. I should have looked harder, questioned more, trusted less." His jaw clenched. "But I'm going to make it right. Starting today." He led her inside the mansion. It was even more impressive on the interior. Soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost more than she'd make in a lifetime. But despite all the luxury, it felt cold, empty, like a museum instead of a home. "Everyone's gathering in the main parlor," Richard said. "Before we go in, I want you to know, Sabrina will be there. She refused to resign, so I'm doing this publicly. My lawyers will be there, and if she tries anything, I'm not afraid of her anymore." Maddie lifted her chin. "Let her be there. Let her see what she couldn't destroy." Richard's expression filled with something that looked like pride. "That's my girl." The parlor was packed with people in expensive suits, all murmuring quietly and glancing at their phones. Maddie recognized a few faces from her internet research. Board members, lawyers, the company's CFO, and standing near the window, perfectly dressed in a cream suit, was Sabrina. Their eyes met across the room, and Sabrina's expression was unreadable. Not angry, not afraid, just calculating, like she was already figuring out her next move. Richard cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice." His voice carried authority, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. "I've called you here today because I need to address a matter that concerns both my personal life and the future of this company." He gestured for Maddie to stand beside him. She walked across the room on shaking legs, very aware of everyone's eyes following her. When she reached Richard's side, he placed a protective hand on her shoulder. 18 years ago, I lost my wife and daughter, or so I was told." Richard's voice hardened. "I grieved them. I built monuments to their memory. I dedicated my life to helping children in foster care, never knowing that my own daughter was suffering in that same broken system." Murmurs rippled through the room. Sabrina's expression remained neutral, but Maddie saw her hands clench. "This is Madison Elizabeth Callahan." Richard's voice rang out clear and strong. "My daughter, alive, and I have DNA evidence to prove it." He pulled out a folder and handed it to his head lawyer, who began distributing copies to everyone in the room. Maddie watched their faces as they read. Shock, confusion, disbelief. "How is this possible?" the CFO asked. "The death certificates were falsified." Richard pulled out another folder, this one thicker. "Over the past 24 hours, my private investigator has uncovered evidence of fraud, bribery, and conspiracy to conceal the whereabouts of a missing child. Police reports were altered. Witnesses were paid off. Records were destroyed, all to make it appear that my wife and daughter had died, when in reality, my 5-year-old daughter was placed into the foster care system under a false name." "Who would do such a thing?" someone asked. Richard turned to look directly at Sabrina. The room followed his gaze. "Someone who wanted to control my life. Someone who saw my family as an obstacle to her own ambitions." His voice was ice. "Someone I trusted more than anyone." Sabrina finally moved, stepping forward with her head held high. "These are serious accusations, Richard. I hope you have proof. I have your signatures on dozens of falsified documents." Richard's lawyer stepped forward with yet another folder. "I have testimony from Patricia Morrison, the nurse who cared for Elena Callahan and can verify that you paid her to remain silent. I have bank records showing payments to police officers and social workers, and I have 18 years of my daughter's suffering because of your actions. I was protecting you," Sabrina said, her voice carrying across the room. "Elena was mentally ill. She was dangerous. She was going to destroy everything you'd built. She was my wife." Richard's composure finally cracked, his voice rising. "And Madison was my daughter. You had no right to make that decision for me. No right to steal my family. No right to let me believe they were dead while my child grew up alone and abandoned." Maddie felt tears streaming down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. "Let them see. Let them all see what Sabrina had done. Mr. Callahan," one of the board members spoke up. "What are you proposing we do?" "Sabrina is terminated from Callahan Enterprises effective immediately. Security will escort her from the premises." Richard's voice was granite. "Additionally, I'm filing criminal charges for fraud, conspiracy, and child endangerment. My lawyers will be coordinating with the district attorney's office." "Richard, please." Sabrina's mask finally cracked, desperation seeping through. "I made mistakes, yes, but I did it for you. Everything I did was for you." "No," Richard shook his head. "You did it for yourself. You wanted control. You wanted to be indispensable, and you were willing to destroy a family to get it. He turned to the 2 security guards who'd been standing quietly by the door. Please escort Mrs. Callahan out. She's no longer welcome here. As the guards approached, Sabrina looked around the room, searching for support, but everyone avoided her eyes. Finally, her gaze landed on Maddie. You don't understand, Sabrina said, her voice breaking. I saved him. I saved this company. Everything he has. He has because of me. Maddie met her eyes steadily. He would have had his daughter. That's worth more than any company. Something in Sabrina's face collapsed. For just a moment, Maddie saw past the polished exterior to something broken and desperate underneath. Then the guards were leading her out, her heels clicking against the marble floor one last time. The room was silent after she left. Richard turned to face everyone, his hand still on Maddie's shoulder. I know this is a lot to process, and I know many of you will have questions. But right now, I want to introduce you properly to my daughter. He looked down at Maddie, and his eyes were wet. Madison, these people work for our company, and as of today, you're my heir. Half of everything I have is yours. Richard, I know you don't want money, he smiled. The first real smile she'd seen from him. But you're getting it anyway, along with your name back, along with a family, along with everything that was stolen from you. He pulled out one more item from his pocket, his half of the star pendant, very carefully. Very deliberately, he removed the chain from around his neck and held it next to hers. The 2 halves clicked together perfectly, forming one complete star with her name shining in the light. Welcome home, Madison Elizabeth Callahan, Richard said, his voice breaking. Welcome home. The room erupted in applause. People stood, some crying, some smiling. The lawyer approached with papers, legal documents that would officially restore her identity, her inheritance, her place in the world. But Maddie barely heard any of it. She was staring at the complete star pendant in Richard's hands, thinking about her mother's letter, about 18 years of questions, about the little girl in the yellow dress who'd finally found her way home. Richard cupped her face in his hands. Is this okay? Is this too much? We can slow down if you need. It's perfect, Maddie whispered. It's exactly right. And for the first time in 18 years, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she really did belong somewhere. 3 weeks later, Maddie stood in the doorway of what Richard kept calling your room, though it still felt strange to think of any space in this massive house as hers. It had been her room once, apparently. Richard had kept it exactly as it was 18 years ago. Pale yellow walls with hand-painted stars, a small bed with a white canopy, shelves lined with picture books and stuffed animals that a 5-year-old girl had loved. He'd preserved it like a shrine, dusting it regularly, but never changing anything, waiting for a daughter who never came home. Until now. We can redecorate, Richard said softly from behind her. Get rid of all this. Make it more appropriate for a 23-year-old, whatever you want. Maddie walked to the bookshelf and pulled out a worn copy of Goodnight Moon. The inside cover had her name written in crayon. Maddie, with the I dotted with a star. I remember this book, she whispered. I remember you reading it to me, your voice doing all the different sounds. Richard's breath hitched. You remember? Pieces, like looking through a foggy window. She turned to face him, the book clutched to her chest. Can we keep some of it? Not all of it. I'm not 5 anymore, but maybe some reminders. We can keep whatever you want. Richard's eyes were wet. This is your home, Maddie, your space. You get to decide what that looks like. Home. The word still felt foreign on her tongue. For 3 weeks, she'd been living here, eating meals in the formal dining room, sleeping in the guest suite while they figured out the bedroom situation, learning the rhythms of a house that had staff and schedules and more space than she knew what to do with. It was overwhelming, wonderful, terrifying, and sometimes, late at night, she still woke up expecting to be back in her cramped Pilsen apartment, convinced this was all a dream. Have you heard anything about Sabrina? Maddie asked, changing the subject. Richard's expression darkened. The DA filed formal charges yesterday: fraud, conspiracy, falsifying government documents, and child endangerment. Her lawyers are trying to negotiate a plea deal, but he shook his head. She's looking at serious prison time. 5 to 10 years. Minimum. Maddie should have felt satisfaction. Triumph, even. But all she felt was tired sadness for what could have been. "Do you miss her?" she asked quietly. "I know she did terrible things, but she was family. For a long time." Richard was quiet for a moment, staring out the window at the oak trees. "I miss who I thought she was. The cousin who helped me through the worst time of my life. But that person never really existed, did she? It was always manipulation. Control." He turned back to Maddie. "I don't miss the real Sabrina. And I'll never forgive her for what she took from us." The doorbell rang downstairs. Richard glanced at his watch. "That'll be Dr. Chen. Are you ready?" Maddie nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety. Dr. Catherine Chen was the family therapist Richard had hired to help them navigate their impossible situation. A father and daughter reunited after 18 years. Trying to build a relationship from scratch while processing massive trauma, they'd been seeing her twice a week, and every session left Maddie emotionally exhausted. But it was helping. Slowly, Dr. Chen set up in the library, a warm space with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and comfortable leather chairs. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and a gentle but direct manner that Maddie found comforting. "How are you both doing this week?" she asked, pulling out her notepad. "Better," Richard said. "We had dinner together every night. Actually sat at the table and talked instead of eating in separate rooms." Dr. Chen smiled. "That's progress, Maddie. How did that feel for you?" "Weird," Maddie admitted. "But good weird. I'm still not used to having someone ask about my day or care what I think about things. Sometimes I forget to answer because I'm so used to being invisible." "That's a very honest observation, Dr. Chen made a note. "Richard, how do you respond when Maddie withdraws like that?" "I try to give her space without disappearing entirely. Let her know I'm here if she wants to talk, but not pressure her." Richard looked at Maddie. "Is that okay? Or am I doing it wrong?" "It's okay." Maddie twisted her hands in her lap. "It's just, I spent 18 years learning not to need anyone. And now I'm supposed to suddenly trust that you'll be here, that you won't leave, that this isn't temporary. My brain doesn't know how to do that yet. And that's completely normal, Dr. Chen said gently. "You've experienced abandonment trauma, Maddie. Even though intellectually you know Richard didn't choose to leave you, your nervous system learned to protect itself by not forming attachments. That's not something that heals in 3 weeks. How long does it take?" Maddie's voice was small. "There's no timeline. Everyone's different." Dr. Chen leaned forward. "But I can tell you that you're doing the work, showing up, being honest about your feelings. That's what matters." They spent the rest of the session talking about boundaries, what Maddie needed to feel safe, what Richard needed to feel like he was actually being a father. It was awkward and uncomfortable, and sometimes Maddie wanted to run out of the room, but she stayed, and that felt like progress too. After therapy, Richard had to leave for a board meeting. "I'll be back by 6, he said, hesitating at the door like he wanted to say something else. "It's okay," Maddie said. "I'm not going anywhere." She meant it as reassurance, but Richard's expression crumpled just slightly before he caught himself. "I know. I'm still getting used to the fact that you're really here, that I get to come home and you'll be here." "Me too." After he left, Maddie wandered the mansion restlessly. It was too big, too quiet. She ended up in the kitchen, where Maria, the housekeeper who'd worked for Richard for 15 years, was preparing dinner. "Miss Madison," Maria said warmly, "are you hungry? I have fresh empanadas." "Just, Maddie is fine," she said for the 100th time. The Miss Madison thing made her uncomfortable, like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. "And yes, please." Maria plated 2 empanadas and poured a glass of lemonade, gesturing for Maddie to sit at the kitchen island. It was the only place in the house where Maddie felt comfortable, less formal than the dining room, less intimidating than the rest of the mansion. "How are you settling in?" Maria asked, her accent lilting gently. "I don't know," Maddie admitted. "Some days it feels normal. Other days I wake up and don't know where I am. That will pass." Maria patted her hand. "I remember when I first came to this country from Mexico. Everything felt wrong. The language, the food, the weather. I didn't think I would ever feel at home. But one day, I woke up and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. That's when I knew I belonged. How long did that take? 2 years, Maria smiled. But you have something I didn't have. You have family who loves you. That makes all the difference. Maddie thought about that while she ate. Richard did love her. She could see it in the way he looked at her, the way he tried so hard to give her space while clearly wanting to make up for 18 years all at once. But love felt complicated when you were still learning how to trust it. Her phone buzzed, a text from Rita at the diner. "Hey stranger, when are you coming back to work? We miss you." Maddie stared at the message. She hadn't been back to the diner since everything happened. Richard had insisted she didn't need to work anymore, that she should focus on healing and figuring out her new life. He'd even deposited money in her account, more money than she'd ever seen in her life. But part of her missed the diner, missed the familiar rhythm of pouring coffee and taking orders, missed being Madison Hale, waitress instead of Madison Callahan. "Eris," she texted back. "Can I pick up a few shifts next week? Just mornings." Rita's response was immediate. "Yes, Tuesday and Thursday." "Okay, perfect." Maddie felt something settle in her chest. She could do this. She could be both people. The girl who'd survived foster care and the daughter who'd found her way home. She didn't have to choose. When Richard came home at 6:30, Maddie was in the library looking through photo albums. Pictures of her parents when they were young and in love. Pictures of her as a baby. Pictures of the family she'd been part of before everything fell apart. "I didn't know you kept all these," she said without looking up. Richard sat down beside her. "I couldn't get rid of them, even when it hurt too much to look. I knew I needed to keep them safe in case," he trailed off, "in case I came back, in case I was wrong about you being gone." He pointed to a photo of Elena holding baby Maddie, both of them laughing. "That was taken at your baptism. Your mother wore her grandmother's dress. She was so happy that day." "Tell me about her," Maddie said. "Not about the sickness, about who she was before." So Richard did. He told her about Elena's laugh, how she'd wanted to be a teacher but put her dreams on hold to help him start the company. He told her about Sunday morning pancakes and Elena's terrible singing voice, and how she'd cried happy tears when Maddie was born. He told her about the woman he'd loved, not the tragedy she'd become. And Maddie listened, tucking each story away like precious stones, building a picture of a mother she barely remembered but desperately wanted to know. "I wish I could remember more," she said when he finished. "You were so young. It's okay that you don't." Richard closed the album gently. "But I can help you remember. With stories, with photos, with love." Maddie leaned her head against his shoulder, carefully, tentatively, testing the weight of the gesture. Richard went very still, like he was afraid to move and break the moment. "I went back to the diner today," Maddie said. I texted them. I'm picking up some shifts next week." She felt Richard tense slightly. "You don't have to work, Maddie. You don't have to worry about money anymore." "I know, but I want to. I need some normal in all this crazy." She sat up to look at him. "Is that okay?" Richard studied her face, and she saw him make a conscious choice to let go. "Of course it's okay. This is your life. You get to decide how to live it." "Thank you." They sat together in comfortable silence as the sun set outside the library windows, painting the room in shades of gold and amber. And for the first time since moving in, Maddie felt like maybe, just maybe, this enormous house with its formal rooms and expensive artwork might actually become home. It would take time. It would take patience. It would take countless therapy sessions and awkward conversations and moments of doubt, but they had time now. They had each other, and that was enough to start with. 6 months later, Maddie stood on the front steps of a newly renovated community center in Pilsen, her hands trembling slightly as she held the ceremonial scissors. The building behind her, once an abandoned warehouse, now gleamed with fresh paint and hope. A banner stretched across the entrance. The Estrella Reunida Foundation. Grand opening. The Star Reunited Foundation. Her name, her story, her purpose. Richard stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder, a gesture that had become natural over the months of therapy and tentative trust building. Behind them, a crowd had gathered. Foster youth, social workers, reporters, and community members who'd watched the transformation happen brick by brick. "You ready?" Richard asked softly. Maddie looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the intimidating millionaire from the bus, but her father, the man who'd patiently taught her how to be a daughter again, who'd given her space when she needed it and shown up every single time she'd asked, who'd cried with her on bad days and celebrated tiny victories like her remembering his middle name, Thomas, or trying his favorite food, Thai, or calling him Dad for the first time instead of Richard. "I'm ready," she said. She cut the ribbon, and the crowd erupted in applause. Children rushed forward to explore the new facility, a place designed specifically for kids aging out of foster care, offering job training, counseling, housing assistance, and most importantly, community. Everything Maddie had needed and never received. Everything she could now provide for others. Inside, the walls were painted in warm colors, sunshine yellow and sky blue, with murals created by local artists depicting stars and constellations. The message was clear. You are not alone. You belong to something bigger. Maria had helped set up a buffet of food, empanadas, tamales, fresh fruit, and cookies shaped like stars. Dr. Chen moved through the crowd, already scheduling intake appointments with interested families. And in the corner, Patricia Morrison sat in a place of honor, tears streaming down her wrinkled face as she watched Maddie give tours to excited teenagers. "You would be so proud," Patricia had whispered to Maddie earlier, pressing Elena's letter into her hands one more time. "Your mother would be so proud." Now, as Maddie showed a shy 15-year-old girl the computer lab where kids could work on resumes and college applications, she felt her mother's presence like a warm breeze. Elena had tried so hard to protect her daughter, had fought against impossible odds, had left breadcrumbs of truth that eventually led Maddie home. This foundation was for Elena as much as it was for Maddie, a way to honor the woman who'd loved her so fiercely that even death couldn't silence her warning. Later that afternoon, after the crowds had thinned and the initial excitement had settled, Richard found Maddie sitting alone in what would be her office, a small room with a desk, a couch, and windows overlooking the street where she'd grown up invisible. "Hey," he said gently. "You disappeared. Just needed a minute." Maddie gestured to the couch. "It's a lot, 6 months ago, I was serving coffee at a diner. Now I'm running a foundation." "You're not doing it alone," Richard reminded her. Sitting down, "We hired a full staff. You have support." "I know." She twisted the star pendant, now complete, hanging on a single chain, between her fingers. "It's just surreal sometimes, like I'm going to wake up and none of this will be real." "It's real." Richard reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're real. This foundation is real. And the lives you're going to change, those will be real too." Maddie felt tears prick her eyes. "I keep thinking about all the kids like me, the ones who aged out with nothing, who are still out there struggling because they don't have anyone. And now they have you." Richard's voice was fierce with pride. "They have this place. They have hope." A knock on the door interrupted them. One of the volunteers poked her head in. "Sorry to bother you, but there's someone here asking to speak with you. She says it's personal." Maddie and Richard exchanged glances. "Who is it?" She said her name is Sabrina Callahan. The name hung in the air like a bomb. Richard's expression immediately hardened. "Absolutely not. Tell her to leave." "Wait!" Maddie stood up, her heart pounding. "I want to see her." "Maddie, no. You don't owe her anything." "I know I don't owe her anything." Maddie's voice was steady. "But I need to do this. For me." Richard looked like he wanted to argue, but after 6 months of therapy, he'd learned when to step back. "I'll be right outside the door." "If you need me." "I know." Maddie gave him a small smile. "Thank you." He left reluctantly, and a moment later, Sabrina walked in. She looked different, smaller, somehow. Her designer clothes had been replaced with simple slacks and a plain blouse. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail instead of the perfect salon style, and her eyes, those calculating eyes that had once threatened Maddie at the iron gate, now looked hollow and haunted. "Hello, Madison," Sabrina said quietly. "It's just Maddie." She didn't offer Sabrina a seat. "Didn't make this easy." "What do you want?" "I wanted to see this place. See what you built." Sabrina looked around the small office. "It's impressive. That's not why you're here." Sabrina flinched slightly. "No, it's not. She took a breath. I'm here because my lawyer suggested it would help my case if I apologized. Show remorse. Make amends before sentencing next month. So this is about getting a lighter sentence. Partially. Sabrina's honesty was surprising. But also because I need to say it. Whether you believe me or not. Maddie crossed her arms, waiting. I'm sorry. Sabrina's voice cracked. I'm sorry for what I did to you. For what I took from you and Richard. For the 18 years you spent alone because of my choices. She wiped her eyes. I told myself I was protecting him, that I was doing the right thing. But the truth is, I was selfish and scared, and I destroyed a family because I couldn't stand the thought of not being needed. You're right, Maddie said coldly. You were selfish. You stole my childhood. You let my father believe I was dead. You manipulated and lied and ruined lives because you wanted control. I know. And now you want forgiveness. Want me to tell the judge you're sorry so you get less time? Sabrina shook her head. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm going to prison, Maddie. 5 to 7 years, probably. And I'll spend every day of that sentence knowing I earned it. She met Maddie's eyes. I just needed you to know that I see what I did. I see the damage. And I'm sorry. They stood in silence for a long moment. Maddie studied the woman who'd once terrified her, who'd held so much power, who'd seemed invincible behind her polish and control. Now she just looked broken. I don't forgive you, Maddie said finally. Maybe someday I will, but not today. I understand, but I don't hate you either. Maddie's voice softened slightly. Hating you would mean giving you power over me, and I'm done letting you have any power. Something flickered in Sabrina's expression. Surprise? Maybe. Or respect. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. I had to be. You made sure of that. Sabrina nodded slowly, then turned to leave. At the door, she paused. For what it's worth, this foundation, what you're doing for these kids, it's good work. Important work. She looked back one more time. Your mother would be proud. Then she was gone. Maddie stood alone in her office, shaking slightly until Richard rushed back in. Are you okay? What did she say? Did she threaten you? No threats. Maddie collapsed onto the couch. She apologized, said she was sorry, and I told her I don't forgive her, but I also don't hate her. Maddie looked up at her father. Is that okay? Richard sat beside her and pulled her into a hug. It's more than okay. It's healthy. You don't owe her forgiveness. But you also don't have to carry hate. That's wisdom, sweetheart. They sat together until Maddie's shaking stopped. That evening, Richard drove them to a small cemetery in Aurora, about an hour outside the city. Elena's grave was simple, a flat marker with her name, dates, and a single engraved star. They'd visited once before, shortly after the DNA results came back. But this time felt different. This time, Maddie had something to say. She knelt down and placed a framed photo against the headstone, the complete photograph from the bus, now professionally restored, showing all three of them, Elena, Richard, and 5-year-old Maddie, all smiling in golden afternoon light. Hi, Mom, Maddie whispered. I found him, just like you asked me to in your letter. I found Dad, and he found me. And we're okay. We're going to be okay. Richard knelt beside her, his hand finding hers. We opened the foundation today, Maddie continued. The Estrella Reunida Foundation. The Star Reunited. It's for kids like me. Kids who need someone to believe in them. Kids who need a home. Her voice broke. I wish you were here to see it. But I think maybe you can see it. Wherever you are. They sat in the quiet cemetery as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold when they finally stood to leave. Richard pulled something from his pocket, the complete star pendant. I've been thinking, he said. This pendant. It was always meant to be whole, and now it is. But I think it belongs somewhere special. He walked to Elena's grave and gently pressed the pendant into the soft earth near the marker, burying it just deep enough to stay secure but shallow enough to catch sunlight. So, she has a piece of us too, he explained, his voice thick. So she knows we're together, that her fight wasn't for nothing. Maddie threw her arms around him, and they held each other as the last light faded from the sky. Driving back to Chicago, They stopped at a small diner that reminded Maddie of Hale's, over burgers and fries, food that felt more comfortable than Maria's gourmet cooking. Richard asked the question he'd been holding back for months. "Are you happy?" "Maddie, really happy, because if this is too much, if you need something different." "I'm happy," Maddie interrupted. "Not every minute of every day. Sometimes I'm scared. Sometimes I'm sad. Sometimes I wake up and can't believe this is my life." She looked at him across the table. "But yes, I'm happy. For the first time in 18 years. I know where I belong." "Where's that?" "With you." She said it simply, honestly. "With my dad." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "I love you, Maddie. I know I didn't get to say it when you were little. I know I missed so many chances, but I'm saying it now, and I'll keep saying it every day for the rest of my life. I love you." "I love you too, Dad." They drove home through the night, and for once, the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful, full of possibility. The past still hurt. The years they'd lost would always be a wound, but they had today, they had tomorrow. They had a foundation built on hope, and a family rebuilt on truth. And somewhere in the darkness above Chicago, a star shone bright. Two halves finally reunited,